Hi guys, and welcome to another video from BetfairTradingCommunity.com. Today's video is actually a blog post that I've written this week that was requested by members. So I've had a lot of members come up to me and say, Martin, what do you do specifically to find second half goals? Whether it be laying the draw, maybe backing over 1.5 or over 2.5 more goals at half time, or laying the current scoreline. So yeah, basically I wrote a piece on this. I'll put the link in the description, but I'm just going to go over it a bit here, kind of add in a few thoughts that I've got on it, but also hopefully help you to understand what exactly I look for and what exactly traders should be looking for in this situation. So I actually start out by talking about something that I think a lot of traders overlook, which is the idea of being prepared. Okay, so I was in the Cubs as a kid. The motto was always be prepared. So not that I really took much notice of that when I was about 6 or 7. But yeah, as I've got older, I've realised just how important it is. And you might have also heard that phrase, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So if you don't prepare, you're basically setting yourself up nicely for failure. And the reason I talk about this is that when you're about to place a trade in play, what's really important to start with is the pre-match research, okay? The pre-match analysis and looking at statistics from the pre-match, looking at the team lineups, weather conditions, all these factors that can go into actually deciding whether you enter the trade before you even start to look at the in-play statistics in more depth. So one thing I do actually that is actually okay to do in this situation is to check the in-play stats as they're going. You know, I like to use Bet365, but you can use whatever for that, whatever works for you. But then when I find a game I think, hey, this looks lively, this looks like goals, I don't just jump straight in, which I think is a mistake, like I say, a lot of traders make. I then go back and check the pre-match research. So the great thing obviously on BTC is we have our trading software, our football software. So you can just go onto our football software, click every individual game and check all the pre-match stats. So you can quickly check, you know, percentage of over 2.5 goals. And you can look at that in the last 10, 20 games, whatever. So you've obviously got a huge range of things you can do there. Now, the key thing here is that we're giving ourselves basically two key pieces of research. We're looking at what's happening in play, what's happening in front of us, and what's happened before and pre-match, which will help us predict what's going to happen in the future. That's essentially what trading is. We're trying to predict what happens in the future. So in this situation, I always say there's a degree of, I would actually put slightly more importance on pre-match stats than I would on in-play stats. Okay, so actually, if the in-play stats are really good, but the pre-match stats aren't, that's just a total no-go for me. And it really doesn't matter how good the in-play stats are, because I know that realistically, this is, at the moment, this is an I don't know how to say that word, anomaly. And basically, because of that, I know that actually I can expect this to regress more to the norm. So actually, a really lively game that pre-match, the stats were suggesting would be low scoring, there's probably a chance that it slows down. And you will see this quite a lot. So if you watch some of the games you like in play, then you check the pre-match. If you check for the ones that the pre-match stats aren't good for goals, then actually watch that match play out. I think you'll see often, and I have, that the matches do slow down. They do regress back to where they should be based on the pre-match. So I like to put about 66% importance on obviously the pre-match, and then I say 33, but obviously 34 to get it up to 100, a third to the in-play stats. So that really should help give you an idea of just how important pre-match is. Now, I'm not going to go into a trade very often with only 66% or 2/3 of it confidence. So if the pre-match stats are good but the in-play doesn't match up at all, I'm going to leave that trade. Okay, so I do still want both, and I must stress that importance. Okay, I'm not saying pre-match stats are more important, therefore in-play stats don't matter. Not at all. I want both. Every time I want both. But my point is that you should never override pre-match stats with the in-play stats. That's actually a big mistake. If you watch a football match, so there's some Premier League action on tonight, so say for example you're watching the Premier League, you will notice games flow. And there's a thing I call game flow, where basically a game can be open for a few minutes, then it can close down for a bit, then it might open up again. There might be lots of shots early on, then it might settle into a rhythm. I talked last week about substitutions, how late in a game can be very open, bring on a couple of sets of fresh legs, maybe defensive midfielders, bang, the game closes right back up again. Okay, so it's really important to monitor game flow when trading. I think a lot of people just assume that if this is happening now, it's going to carry on happening for the rest of the match. So for example, if there's a great first half in terms of shots on target, shots off target, corners, dangerous attacks, whatever, that it will definitely be exactly the same in the second half. And a lot of the time, that's not the case. So, like I say, I really can't stress enough about how important pre-match stats are to me. You know, they really are, like I say, about 67% of it for me. So what is it? Let's go on to what I look for specifically, okay? Because I realised that probably a lot of people realise the importance of pre-match. I have obviously a successful lay the draw at halftime filter. I've sent it out to members for months now. I've had great results with it. And obviously if you've been a member and following that, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm actually going to list now the criteria, because I've written it down here, and I'm actually going to list the exact criteria I use. Okay, so here are the filters that I put in to our software, and that gives me a filter each day and filters out all the games that I'm not going to trade for this, and gives me a short list. And then from that short list, I can then look at those few games in depth and make a decision whether to trade, obviously, in play. So my rules are, less than 10% of the matches have to be 0-0 between the two teams. So say the two teams have played 10 games each that season, I want less than 10% to be 0-0. Okay, I want the away team to have scored in 75% of their away games. So that's quite high. You know, I want the away team to be scoring at least 3 out of 4 matches. Home team, I want 80%. So it's even more important that the home team likes to score goals. Because inevitably, when you're laying the draw, the home team's probably favourite, because in football, the home team is normally favourite. So we want the home team to score, because the draw price will swing out more. If the underdog scores, generally, the price after half-time does drift, but often it's not a huge amount. So you might only be looking at 10-20% stake profit. The teams must have played at least 8 games this season. And I don't mind, in that respect, I don't mind 4 home, 4 and away, and then I just analyse the 4 at home for the home team. But I want there to have been 8 games. I restrict the data to the current season, so again, a no-brainer for me. Football teams are very different season to season, so you can't really take it by that. And in that respect, actually, I would get rid of promoted and relegated teams, which we can also do in our software. Just click those out, because again, they're not going to be relevant until later in the season, because you can't take, for example, if Norwich are playing, I can't take their stats from another division the season before and assume it's going to be the same in a higher or a lower division. And I also exclude playoff matches, purely because I see playoff matches as cup games. Cup games, teams have different motivations, they do different things. So yeah, I just don't like playoffs for trading. And then my scope, which means how far back the stats will go, is 20 matches. So basically, if they've played over 20 matches that season, I'll only take into account the last 20 for my statistical data, because I do want a lot of data, so I want a long period of it where possible, but at the same time, you know, is a match in September relevant to one that's going to happen in May? I mean, how often do you actually see a team win a game in September, Norwich, Man City this year, and then I think May, it could be a very different, or whenever we play them next, it's going to be a very different story. So it's amazing how much can change in the course of a season for a team. And of course, we don't want things to change too much. We're going for predictability. That's how we make our money. That's how we have our edge, that we're pushing a predictability. And actually, we've got a knowledge that this is likely to happen. This is likely to either, if the game's low scoring, because on these really I'm after 0-0 and 1-1s. I probably would get in at 2-2 just because obviously the game is open and you feel like there's going to be another goal. But when it's low scoring, especially a scoreline like 0-0, well, I know that statistically it's very unlikely that the home and away team aren't going to score. So I could get a really good lay the draw price, either at half time or at 60 minutes. I quite often get in at 60, 65 minutes now. I love that little sweet spot because you can get really good odds. So you don't have to have a ridiculous strike rate to make good profit. But you know, if you've got a home team playing an away team and they both score, you know, more than 77.5% of their games, then there's a huge chance there's going to be a late goal because these teams don't really do 0-0s. So in that spot, you can get in at good odds and it can make you a good profit. If the goal goes in, lay the draw, you can get out often for nearly a full stake profit. It's absolutely brilliant late on in the games. So yeah, obviously, like I say, we've got the betfairtradingcommunity.com football software, and the brilliant thing with that is you can set up your filters. So like I say, all I did was plug in those rules, and now the filter spits out selections for me every day. So I don't have to go and do hours and hours of research on every single match. What I'll do is I'll get my shortlist from the filter, and then I'll work from that and work out which matches I'm actually going to trade. So, you know, especially as a pro, how much time am I saving? To me, time's really important because time is money. You know, obviously, if you're doing this for a living, I think time's hugely important. But even if you're not, you know, how much time do you have? If you're working full time, you probably don't have hours and hours to trade. So this software is going to be bang up your street because it's going to save you so much time. But also, it's going to spit out data in a way that it's accurate. You know, it's not going to be your human error that you accidentally slip a match into your filter that shouldn't have been and things like that. So it's brilliant in that way. That emotion doesn't come into it. You know, it just tells you the cold hard fact. This is potentially a really good selection. Look at it further on your shortlist. And I mean, my trading improved since I started using it, and obviously loads of people keep saying how happy they are with the software. The other good thing is we're always working on it. So, you know, if you do want anything added, things like that, we've done so much of that, especially for Richard, who always has some new idea of what he wants in the software. But that's brilliant. We really want people to embrace it and use it well, because the whole point is if we can make our lives easier as traders, save time. You know, I mean, what a commodity, let's face it, time is in this society, especially if you've got a family, like I've got a young family. You know, you have to be in there doing things with them. You can't just be sitting and trading all day and all night. So yeah, let's go on to the Inplay. What is it that I look for when I get involved? So I've actually written a list here and I'm going to go through that. I have a few things I look for. The first thing I look for is I will generally try and enter for goals around half time or 60 minutes when trading in play. The reason is, if I'm looking at the in-play stats, I want to have enough data to look at. And really, before half time, there's not a ton of data in a match, is there? So, you know, after 15 minutes, can you really tell me exactly how a match is going to pan out? Not really. But however, at half time, if that momentum's carried on, if there's been lots of shots and things like that, you're going to have much more knowledge and go, actually, okay, maybe this is a good opportunity to get in. You know, if a football match, so I'll give an example here, if a football match gets to half time, it's been no shots on target and 2 shots off target, so just 2 shots in 45 minutes, I'm unlikely to get into a goal trade at that point, am I? It's just not lively enough, okay? But if, however, it gets in with 7 shots on target, 8 shots off, I'm much more likely to enter the market in that situation. And the other good thing is, what I like to do is, when you get to 45 minutes, you can actually write, this is what I do, I physically, pen and paper this, not even on the computer, I write down the stats of a match I'm interested in. So I might have 4 or 5 games and I write down the stats, 5 shots on target, 6 shots off target, 5 corners. The reason is that I want to see between 45 and 60, maybe 65 minutes, I want to see how much action there is. Because if that action carries on, and there's a few more shots on and off target in those 20 minutes, wow, this could be a really good goal trade to get in late on. Remember, we've already shortlisted the selection as pre-match, so we know that goals are expected. Then we get to 45 minutes, it might be 0-0, maybe 1-1, and we think there's definitely goals in this, the stats look good. Then suddenly, 20 minutes later, there's been no more shots. I'm going to leave that trade. I'm at least going to leave it for 5-10 minutes, and then unless there's suddenly a ramp up and 2 or 3 shots on target in those 5-10 minutes, I'm not going to get involved, because actually the game has totally died out. Something has happened at half time. Maybe the managers just tightened things up, sorted things out. They often do in football. That's why even if you're really tempted again at half time, you won't lose a lot by waiting till 50 minutes, because those first 5 minutes are often dead. And you'll get a few more ticks of value, obviously, when you do enter the trade, because you'll get a slightly better price to enter the longer the match has gone on. And you'll find a lot of the time, between that 45 and 50th minute, it's not very often you're going to get stung by a goal. So that can be a really good time to assess, right, have they come out and been open? Does this look like there's going to be a goal? And like I say, a lot of the time, I'll wait till 60, 65 when the odds are really good. You don't need a huge strike rate to make money. But when you do win that trade, you're quite often getting close to 100% stake profit, which obviously is absolutely brilliant. So, like I say, one of the other things obviously I like, pretty obvious, is I like lots of shots on target, lots off target. So what I kind of try and sort of rule of thumb go for is I want 5 shots on target plus, at least, and then 5 shots off target plus, and a few corners thrown in. Now, kind of a rule of 10 there. If there's 3 shots on target and 7 off, I'm not that keen. However, if it was, say, 4 shots on target, 6 shots off, I'm still keen. I want to know what's happening in the second half. And obviously, if it's 6 shots on target and 4 off, that's good enough, because I value shots on target slightly higher than shots off target, because they're often more meaningful. It's very rare that a shot on target is totally meaningless. Well, of course, you will get the odd virtual back pass to the goalkeeper. But still, in that situation, you have to remember, even if it was a weak shot, they got into the position to have a shot on target. Now, statistically, that's a good thing. We want teams to be having shots on goal if we're looking for goals. Pretty obvious to say, but it's amazing how often I see people get involved in trades when, in 60 minutes when there's been 2 shots on target. And I think, really? Maybe it ramps up in the next 5-10 minutes and this was one of your pre-match filtered games, but you've got to be really careful in those situations. Like I say, I've heard people say the in-play stats were good, pre-match wasn't, but I'm going to go for it anyway. That's a red flag. And then obviously the other red flag, the pre-match stats are good, but the in-play stats are terrible. Another red flag. But like I say, I use Bet365 for the in-play, and I like to keep all the stats in one place. So I know BTC, we're hoping to do something similar and build some software around that. We're always building software. One of the things we do, which is brilliant, and obviously we have to thank the members for, because they've helped improve our trading as well as their own, is that their membership fees, pretty much all of it, goes straight back into the software, web hosting, things like that. So obviously we're building more software as we speak. We've already built the football and tennis software. We want to get horses out there next. We're doing some back testing stuff. Then we'd like to get some in-play stuff going. So, like I say, it's a great time to be around. Okay, here's the third thing that I like to find in play. Dangerous attacks. are really a plus. Okay, so this is kind of Bet365 specific, so if you don't use that, you can't really use this. But they have a thing where a team has attacks, so if they get just over the halfway line with the ball, they'll kind of call it an attack. But if they get into the final third, they'll call it a dangerous attack, you know, if they have a passage of threatening period of play. Now, obviously, a team's going to have more attacks and dangerous attacks because it's a lot easier to get into that kind of the first part of the half, the attacking half, than the second part. So what you kind of end up with a lot of the time is you might end up with 100 attacks but only 50 dangerous attacks. Now, I quite like that. That's kind of my limit. I like dangerous attacks to be basically the number to be 50% of whatever the attack number is. So if attack number is 100, dangerous attacks is 50. Well, 50 is 50% of 100. So I like the fact that that number adds up in that way. If attacks were 100 and dangerous attacks were 60, even better. So that's a 60% ratio. However, obviously on the flip side of that, if it's 100 attacks but only 40 dangerous, that's kind of telling me, yeah, the team might be getting in the other team's half, but they're not doing anything with it. They're not really threatening. So I kind of use that 50% rule of thumb thing. I find it really works well because sometimes you'll be amazed how many games you can get. You think, yeah, there's loads of attacks here. Look, 100 attacks. And then you look and there's only been like 15 dangerous attacks. You think, how is that possible? Well, it is possible, and it does happen quite a lot. So another thing to look out for, because like I say, if we can have as many things going our way before we enter the trade, then we've got more confidence in that trade, haven't we? So I also want to share with you my fourth point here. I have a little simple trick, and this is actually the final point. It's quite a long video, I'm sorry for that. It's a bit longer than I was expecting it to be. But, you know, I like to explain these things fully because the amount of times people ask me these questions, and obviously, you know, it's easy for me on BTC to answer questions directly to members. But I know that obviously a lot of people out there who aren't members will have these kinds of questions, and it might be something that's prohibiting them from getting involved in trading. And, you know, we'd hate to think that because it's actually, there are little tricks you can use to give yourself a leg up. And like I say, so that little trick really, like I say, is the same as when I write down on the paper, I write down the stats at half time. Now, again, I don't think the market always takes into account fully how open or unopen a game is. I think a lot of the time, if you watch the markets on Betfair, all they're doing is they've got their pre-match prices, and then when it goes in play, they just react to the time. So the time ticks away, and therefore the prices erode at a gradual rate, pretty similar every match. I find it's rare, it does happen, but it's rare that the market takes a ton of notice to what's happening on the field. So unless there's a goal, unless there's a red card, odds just tick down in a fairly straight line, and it's pretty much, you know, it doesn't matter how open the game is. Now, maybe it takes into account a little bit, but I don't think it's enough. And I think this is where you can start to really have a leg up on the market. When you know that a match is loads more open than the odds are suggesting, when you know that there's value in this over's price because you're watching the game or you're looking at the stats and this goal looks imminent, that's the position you can get in. Because you've got to remember that the traders who are laying these prices, who are seeding the market as they call it, their interest isn't in what's happening or what's going to happen. Their interest is in keeping the odds in line, basically, with what they were pre-match. You know, taking into account the time ticking away. So that's a massive way of giving yourself a leg up in the market there. And I might even do a blog post on that because I think it's such an important point. And again, we're always looking at ways to have an edge on the market, aren't we? Because that's essentially all this is. We're trying to get an edge on the market. So yeah, like I say, the key is you can do all these things in play. I've given you an outline of what I look for. Remember, this all starts with pre-match, okay? No matter what you're doing, make sure you have that pre-match shortlist. Try not to veer away from that. I really do recommend strong discipline because obviously if you're not having discipline, if you're getting involved in other games that you weren't going to, the worry is as well, not just the fact that you shouldn't be getting involved with them. The worry is emotion might take over, because you won't have a trading plan, because you weren't planning to trade that game. And you should always have a trading plan, a kind of an entry point, potential exit point. So I'll give you a quick kind of overview of my opinion of the exit points in these situations. I say you want to look for, is the game slowing down? Because if you get to 70, 75 minutes and the game has totally died down, that's the time to get out. Now you might think, okay Martin, but we know statistically most goals are scored between 75 and 90. Shouldn't I just stay in and just risk the stake? Well, you can do that. That's not the end of the world. If you're pushing value over the long term, there's nothing wrong with doing that. The problem is the time it's wrong, the time you should exit, and again, this is the difference between gambling and trading, right? We're exiting, and not just that, we're giving ourselves the option to exit, because gambling isn't doing that, okay, but trading is. Now, you don't always have to take the opportunity, but the fact is you're assessing the trade. You should always be assessing the trade, seeing what's going on, right? 10 minutes have gone, there's not been a shot on goal. I just take a small loss, because you've got to remember as well, if say you get in at half time, between 45 minutes and 60 minutes, you're not going to make a massive loss on a lay the draw trade, okay? Where it really starts to cut away at your stake is when you get between that 75 and 90 minutes, because the market will come down a lot quicker, because obviously time is running out and you're kind of getting towards last chance saloon. But I don't have a problem with anyone staying in if the stats are really good and it really does suggest that a last minute goal could be on the cards. I mean, there was a game the other night, West Brom Preston, and the stats were absolutely brilliant pre-match, stats were brilliant in play. There's nothing to suggest there wouldn't be a goal, but you had to hold your nerve in that situation, because the goal came in the 93rd minute. Now, had the game died down, I'd have happily taken a loss. And in that situation, yes, I would have lost, but the trade would have won had I stayed in. But that's fine. You can't worry about the what-ifs. You've got to do what's right at that moment, according to what you're seeing in front of you and according to your pre-match research. So yeah, sorry, it's been a really long video, but hopefully that's given you a really good overview. If you have any questions, obviously ask me. I expect to hear from Chris and John as usual. The two biggest fans of my videos and Betfair trading community. Love hearing from those guys. And yeah, obviously visit the site if you want to learn more about us, betfairtradingcommunity.com. We give out free strategies, so if you just give your email, we can send you some free strategies anyway. You don't have to sign up to be a member, but obviously you're going to get a hell of a lot more benefit and of being a member. And essentially we're a trading education service, so that's how we see ourselves, kind of Betfair University really. Maybe we need to copyright that term itself. But yeah, we're going to educate people on how to trade. So if you are serious about trading, if you do want to make a living out of trading, if you love trading on football but have been losing money and want to start making some money, then head on over to betfairtradingcommunity.com and we're going to do our absolute best to help you do that. Okay guys, thanks for watching.